Hello again, Jim Dowson here, guest presenter with the Templar Report. Today I want to speak to you about something that is so bizarre that you may think, he's got to be making this up. Well, I wish I was making it up, but I'm not. And it is funny, but it's not funny because this kind of madness is costing people's lives, and I want to tell you what it is. There was a case, when was this case in court?
A week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, about a week and a half ago, roughly. In a British court. This is in Britain now. This happened in Britain. Because I know a lot of people from across the world watch this, but this is in the UK. The once mighty Great Britain. That bus left a long time ago. Because there's a gentleman here called, now bear with me, Mohsanath Chowdhury. Mohsanath Chowdhury. What country does this fella come from?
Britain.
He comes from Britain. But where is he from originally at some point? Is it India, Pakistan?
Yeah. Chowdhury.
Pakistan, Bangladesh, somewhere like this. Anyway, he was up in court for going crazy, mental, I remember it, charging about with a sword outside Buckingham Palace. This guy makes a full frontal attack on Buckingham Palace with a sword and attacked the police and people and all the rest of it. He was he swerved through the cones in a vehicle into the path of a police van outside Buckingham Palace. Then he got out with a 42-inch sword, a 4-foot sword, and took swipes at the police and so on and so forth while screaming, guess what? Guess what? I love Jesus? No. Allah Akbar! Allah Akbar! And he's chopping at people with a 4-foot sword. The usual stuff we're used to in England. But he, last week, was found not guilty of preparing acts of terrorism after his trial at the Old Bailey. Can you believe this? Can you believe this? The law in this country said, no, this was not politically motivated. This was not an act of terror. So we've got this guy, Muslim chap, with a 42-inch sword, charges his car through the police cordons at Buckingham Palace, the Queen's residence, jumps out with this sword, attacks everybody, screaming Allah Akbar, not guilty of terrorism. But in court, you might think, maybe they didn't know. Yeah, they did know, and they knew more than that. Let me explain to you how corrupt our system is. In court, the evidence was heard that he used encrypted messaging apps to send ISIS propaganda to friends and defended the terrorist group's atrocities. The court heard this evidence. And while in prison, officers found hand-drawn pictures stuck in his cell of a police officer being shot and the 9/11 attacks. Yet a British court, the Old Bailey, said, no, this man's not a terrorist. This is how serious it's becoming now in the West. We're in a state of suicidal denial. It's like a couple of years ago, do you remember when all those dozens of women were raped in Germany? Was it Hamburg or Cologne? It was Cologne. Dozens and dozens of women raped in Cologne, and some government officials were apologising to the refugee camp, the people who did the rape came from the refugee camp, and they were apologising to the refugees. We're ever so sorry you raped our women. Oh, you're just not used to your Western women running about drinking and perhaps being not as clad as your women are. We're ever so sorry you were forced to rape them. You know, this is actually happening. This is actually real. And, you know, normally I'd be screaming at the camera with fury, but I'm so shocked and so disappointed because this is costing people's lives. People are dying because of this madness. And I want to show you the contrast. Only a couple of years ago, I think it was in Scotland, a young man called Kevin Crehan, he was eating a bacon sandwich and he'd half of it left, and he very stupidly and very ignorantly tossed it over at the mosque, into the grounds of the mosque. He was jailed. What was his jail sentence?
A year.
1 year in jail. He was put in prison for a year. And he died in jail. This was in 2016, and they're now only starting his inquiry to find out, how did he die? What happened to him? Well, I've got a good idea what happened to him. And I'm sure anybody watching this film's got a good idea what happened to him. So this guy throws a half-eaten bacon sandwich into a mosque's grounds. He goes to jail for a year and is killed, died, whatever, in jail. This guy smashes a car through a police cordon at Buckingham Palace in London, the Queen's residence, jumps out with a 4-foot sword, screams Allah Akbar, swipes at everybody, tries to kill people, tries to cut the head off people, and the court said, no, this is not terrorism, it's fine. Are you for real? This is so disgraceful. It's so disgraceful. And I want to let you know exactly the stage of this, because this is what this Mr. Chowdhury sent a letter, and it was intercepted, and this was read out in court before they came to the conclusion that he wasn't a terrorist. I quote, this is a direct quote. To his sister, he wrote a letter saying, tell everyone that I love them, and that they should struggle against the enemies of Allah with their lives and their property. The Queen and her soldiers will all be in the hellfire. They go to war with Muslims all around the world and kill them without mercy. They are the enemies of Allah. Tell us to fight. Please make dua, this is prayers, for me that Allah accepts my efforts. And a British court said this man was not a terrorist. This is insanity. And this is the same, this is madness. In Britain, we've allowed about 3,000 or 4,000 ISIS fighters back into Britain after fighting over in Syria. Yet a young guy came back a few weeks ago, ex-soldier, who'd went out there to volunteer to fight in the legal militias over there, to fight for the Syrian government against ISIS and so on in one of the militias. And he returned home, a hero, and what happened to him? The British arrested him. They arrested him. This guy's charging at the Queen's house with a sword, swiping at tourists, running at people with his car, and he's not a terrorist. Folks, this is what we have become. And the Templars have been telling people for years that if you think parading up and down the street in these patriot marches, or even wearing yellow vests and blocking a few bridges and doing all this stuff is going to change anything, you are deluded. The ruling elite of this country and of all the West have already made their minds up that we are being replaced. All resistance is futile, and they will back the enemy every single time. And if you raise your head, you will be crushed. That's the reality. They don't care how many children die at kids' concerts. They don't care how many people are blowing up the tubes. They don't care how many buses get blown up. They don't care how many people have their heads cut off. They do not care. Everyone says to defeat us. Well, we won't be defeated. We will fight on. We will deal with this as we have to deal with it. But do not look to the British courts or any Western courts or governments for justice, because there is no justice for us. These decisions that I've just told you about, I pray that I was making them up, but I'm not. They're real, they're true, and that's what we've got to deal with. And if it was bad last year, you can be rest assured it's going to be far worse next year. And for the people in Britain, remember this, within a year we could have Jeremy Corbyn as the Prime Minister, and then the fun will really start. We are now beginning to enter the realms of a total collapse. It's not the end, but it's certainly the end of the beginning, and that's a fact, and we have to get used to that, and we have to brace ourselves mentally and spiritually for the events that we're going to have to face. So I'll leave you with that. I wish it wasn't true, but it is. But remember, the Templars are always here. We will never desert our people. And when a time comes when you can no longer trust the establishment, you cannot trust the government, you cannot trust the courts, you cannot trust the police, who can you trust? I'll tell you, you can trust. You can trust the Knights Templar. People have been trusting us for 900 years, and you can trust us for another 900 years. That's all from me in the Templar Report. I'll speak to you again.
The threat is real, and we are on the front line. In a world of misinformation and attacks from the left and mainstream media, censorship, deplatforming, it is time to call out the fake news and bring you the truth. We are the Knights Templar. Visit our website and join today. We are the Resistance. Deus Vult.